Welcome to our explainer on Victor Hugo's absolute sprawling masterpiece, Les Miserables. Today, we're unpacking the massive, intertwining themes of redemption and revolution that are the lifeblood of this incredible story. It is a giant tapestry of history, romance, and philosophy, but don't worry, we are going to break it all down so you can see exactly how Hugo weaves everything together.
So, let's jump right in with the big question that drives this whole epic narrative. Can a single act of radical forgiveness rewrite the destiny of a condemned man and an entire nation? Because Hugo doesn't just want to spin a good yarn here. He really wants to explore whether people, and by extension societies, are actually capable of fundamental change.
We're going to navigate this journey in 6 clear steps. First, lighten the darkness. Second, the crushing weight of poverty. Third, law versus moral justice. Fourth, a broken generation. Fifth, the flames of revolution. And finally, final redemption.
Starting with Section 1, Light in the Darkness, the Spark of Change.
Right off the bat, we get this stark, brilliant contrast between the selfless Bishop Myriel and the hardened ex-convict Jean Valjean. Imagine walking into a town not just as an outsider, but branded by a yellow passport that literally marks you as a former convict. The town expects the absolute worst from Valjean, and so he internalizes all that darkness. But then you have Bishop Myriel. He operates entirely in trust and light. He offers Valjean shelter and a hot meal when literally everyone else, even a dog kennel, turns him away.
What's really fascinating here is Hugo's use of a literary device called pathetic fallacy. Basically, it's when the environment matches the moral mood. When Valjean is lurking in the shadows, plotting to steal Myriel's silver, the sky is dark and cloudy. It's almost as if nature itself is frowning on the crime. But the exact moment the opportunity for grace appears, a beam of moonlight illuminates Myriel's sleeping face. That visual contrast sets up Valjean's ultimate choice to step out of the darkness.
Moving right along to Section 2, The Crushing Weight of Poverty, Society's Victims and Villains. Hugo doesn't hold back in showing how society's rigidity destroys people, and Fantine is the prime example. She's a working-class single mother, and her descent into complete poverty and prostitution isn't a personal failure, it's driven by the cruel gossip of her coworkers and the absolute greed of the Thénardiers, who extort her for her daughter Cosette's care. Contrast that with Valjean, who is now operating under the alias Madeleine. He uses the innovations of the Industrial Revolution to build this incredibly prosperous factory town. Hugo's basically arguing that innovation and brains can level the playing field, but our social judgments are what tear people down.
We also get a really crucial character foil here, between true and false heroism. Valjean is the real deal, a self-sacrificing hero who risks everything to protect the innocent. And then we have Thénardier. Let's talk about Waterloo. Thénardier is literally out there prowling the battlefield to rob corpses. By pure chance, he drags an officer named Pontmercy out of a pile of bodies just to steal his watch and his money. But Pontmercy wakes up and mistakenly thinks Thénardier saved his life, glorifying an absolute scoundrel. It's Hugo's way of showing how society gets it entirely backwards, rewarding the wicked and punishing the virtuous.
Which brings us to Section 3, Law versus Moral Justice, the Weight of the Law.
Valjean faces what Hugo calls a tempest within a brain, an absolutely impossible choice. A dim-witted man named Champmathieu is arrested and mistakenly identified as the fugitive Jean Valjean. Now, Valjean is a highly successful mayor. He's supporting an entire town. Does he stay silent, keep his alias, and let an innocent man rot in prison? Or does he turn himself in, sacrificing his own freedom and crashing the town's economy just for absolute moral truth?
Remarkably, Valjean chooses morality. He confesses in court, which triggers this agonizing, stressful cycle of flights and rebirth. First, he actually fakes his own drowning on a warship called the Orion. Then he heads straight to Montfermeil to rescue little Cosette, handing the greedy Thénardiers 1,500 francs without even trying to haggle. And finally, with Inspector Javert hot on his heels through the streets of Paris, he scales a massive wall and drops into the Petit Picpus convent. It's a place of severe religious restriction, sure, but it acts as a safe, idyllic prison away from the reach of the law.
Now for Section 4, A Broken Generation, Paris in Turmoil.
You literally can't understand the stakes of this story without looking at the timeline of 19th century France. These characters are navigating an incredibly volatile era. You've got the original 1789 revolution, then Napoleon's crushing defeat at Waterloo in 1815, leading to the Bourbon Restoration, right into the July Revolution of 1830. All of this constant political whiplash leads directly into the student-led June Rebellion of 1832, which is the powder keg for our story's climax. And you see this political whiplash tear families apart right at the dinner table. Take Marius's family. His grandfather, Gillenormand, is a staunch royalist supporting the old monarchy. His father, Pontmercy, is an ardent, die-hard follower of Napoleon. And then you have Marius himself, the democratic grandson who completely breaks away from his family's rigid identities to join a revolutionary student group called the Friends of the ABC.
Hugo eventually sets up a literal pressure cooker in a rundown tenement called the Gorbeau House. The coincidences here are wild. Marius happens to live right next door to the now destitute Thénardiers. Thénardier lures Valjean into an ambush to extort him. The cop Marius calls for help happens to be Javert. And the kicker, Marius realizes Thénardier is the man his father claimed saved his life at Waterloo. Marius is completely paralyzed, caught between protecting his girlfriend's father and honoring his own father's dying wish.
But it's not all bleak. Even in this broken, impoverished generation, Hugo shows us that true light can bloom in the darkest slums. Look at the Thénardier children. You have Gavroche, this kid living inside a giant hollow elephant statue, giving his only food and clothes to abandoned street kids. And Éponine, who, despite her incredibly abusive upbringing, literally throws herself in front of a soldier's rifle to save Marius. They are the living proof that you absolutely do not need wealth or a respectable family to have a virtuous heart.
Now we hit the climax in Section 5, the Flames of Revolution, the Barricades of 1832.
The situation is dire. The student revolutionaries are trapped, outnumbered, and need to smuggle 5 men out to safety. But they only have 4 army uniforms to use as disguises. Enter Valjean. Like an absolute angel dropping from the sky, he just tosses a 5th uniform onto the pile. It's a classic Deus Ex Machina, an unexpected power swooping in to fix an impossible problem. By this point, Valjean's goodness has elevated him so much that the normal rules of the world just don't seem to apply to him anymore.
In the middle of all this bloodshed, where even the good guy students are executing people, Valjean stages a totally different kind of revolution. He's given the chance to finally execute Javert, the man who has relentlessly hunted him for decades, but he doesn't do it. Instead, he fixed the execution and just lets him go. Valjean proves right there that the most powerful weapon of revolution isn't a rifle at all. It's radical forgiveness.
And finally, Section 6, Final Redemption, the collision of logic and grace. Javard's brain essentially short-circuits after Valjean spares him. He's built his entire existence on this black and white binary. Criminals are bad, the law is flawless, period. Valjean's unconditional mercy throws a massive wrench into that. Javard faces a total logical collapse. He can't arrest a man who is clearly good, but he also can't betray his lifelong duty to the law. Unable to compute this paradox, he completely removes himself from the equation by jumping into the raging waters of the Seine.
Meanwhile, Valjean confesses his criminal past to Marius, and Marius, horrified, slowly pushes him away. So how does the truth finally come out? It's incredibly ironic. The villainous Thénardier shows up to extort Marius, claiming Valjean as a murderer. He even pulls out a piece of torn fabric as proof that Valjean was carrying a dead body through the sewers. But Marius looks at the fabric and realizes it's from his own jacket. Thénardier accidentally provides the exact, undeniable proof that Valjean was actually the saintly savior who carried Marius through the sewers to safety.
Marius and Cosette rush to Valjean just in time. Hugo describes the moment beautifully. The light from the candlesticks fell across him. His white face looked up toward heaven. It's this profoundly peaceful passing that perfectly closes the loop. Valjean's promise to the bishop to become an honest man has been fully, perfectly realized.
Having unpacked this monumental journey of justice, poverty, and love, what's the big takeaway here? Hugo shows us that even the most hardened among us can be transformed. So I'll leave you with this. How will you carry the light of radical forgiveness in your own life? And how will you let grace shape your story? Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me today. Go read the actual book and see what other incredible secrets Hugo hid in the shadows.